Hello. Thank you for joining me. My name is Chrissy Hodges, and you are here for the 8th, I wanted to say annual, but I guess it would be like weekly, COVID Fireside Chats here at OCD Game-Changers. And we're also streaming live at intrusivethoughts.org on Facebook. They are a great organization. Check them out. Made of Millions is Aaron Harvey's organization. They do so much to bring awareness to all kinds of mental health conditions and just reduce stigma and bring all of us together. So check them out when you get a chance. OCD Game-Changers is a nonprofit that brings people together to create community, create awareness, to elevate people that are doing creative and innovative projects in order to bring OCD awareness to the world. And we are contributing these fireside chats at this point to help normalize what people are going through during these really, really uncertain times. My name is Chrissy Hodges. I'm the founder and executive director of OCD Game-Changers. I'm also the author of Pure OCD, The Invisible Side of Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, and I do peer support and referral consultations through Treatment for OCD, Treatment for OCD Consulting. That's right. That's my business name. There we go. Got it. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to someone else because clearly I've had too much coffee. All right, Patrick, you go next.
Sure. Hi, thanks, Chrissy. My name is Patrick McGrath, and I'm the head of clinical services for NoCD. NoCD provides online teletherapy for people with obsessive compulsive disorder. And we also have the NoCD app, and there's a great platform in there for a community to be able to chat with people all over the world and find support for people who have OCD and get questions answered. And again, just be able to be there to provide support for people as well, too. And there's a great section for therapy tools, so you can really support doing your exposure and response prevention therapy on the app as well.
Excellent. All right, Margaret, who are you?
Who am I? I'm Margaret Sisson. I'm executive director of Riley's Wish Foundation, a foundation that I set up after the loss of my son, who struggled with OCD and substance use disorder. We offer resources, education for families and sufferers. Started in Georgia, but we're taking it different places, which one has been Patrick. So my support for Game Changer, because it's incredible, the game-changing people that are making a difference in this world. So that's me.
Margaret Sisson is also on the board of OCD Game-Changers. Yay!
Yay!
Okay, so thank you for all being here. I'm going to just describe a little bit about what we're doing. So typically, if you've been tuning into our fireside chats, you've noticed it's been a pretty authentic conversation, just talking about kind of where we are emotionally during this unprecedented time, not knowing when things are going to end, how things are going to change, which can be really hard for people with OCD, but also just hard in general for our society, as we've been seeing. When this week we've been a little bit more targeted in the topics we've talked about. On Monday I was with Allegra. We talked about how shaming is not okay and bullying online is not okay during this time, and support is the better way to go. And today we wanted to focus specifically on addiction, substance use, and that's why I asked Patrick. Can I call you Patrick?
Sure. Or Fred. Fred is fine as well, too. Whatever you prefer. So.
I didn't know if you wanted me to call you Dr. McGrath or Dr. P. Either way. And then I brought Patrick on, and also Margaret, because of their expertise and their dedication and advocacy for individuals who are struggling with addiction. So we really want to focus on that today. With everything that has been going on in the world right now, there are several areas and struggles that people are going through that are kind of getting pushed to the background, but are still very prevalent and still very real for people. Addiction is one of them, and substance use. And people are already panicking. This is an uncertain time, and all of a sudden getting kind of thrown into isolation and having to be in houses with people and isolated with them when maybe you haven't. All this stuff can drive people back into substance use or addiction if they've been in recovery, can drive people to drink more or use more if they are practicing harm reduction. And so today I just wanted to open up a conversation, and let's just let's just talk about it. How can we normalize this for people? How can we help evoke empathy for people who may not understand the struggles for people with addiction and substance use? So with that, I'm just going to open it up to the floor, to the two of you. What have you seen kind of from a societal perspective about what has been happening right now through this pandemic and how people may be struggling who are dealing with addiction and substance use?
I can jump on that. First of all, because of our distancing aspects that we have, there's a great likelihood that many people aren't able to go to the support meetings that they've been attending in the past. And if they relied on those meetings as the opportunity to share their struggles, their concerns, to support others, and to have a place to go instead of going and using, now, if those are not there for them anymore, the chance for relapse increases because of the loss of the thing that they relied on to really help them through this time. So it's unfortunate that in a time of stress, of course, that just adds stress to everybody's life, right? And for people who already have difficulty coping with stress, the addition of stress and the removal of the things that they've used to help them with the stress can be very significant blows to their recovery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that. I really see where there's, whether it be a meeting or that contact, that human contact with people, and those relationships are so key to helping people stay in recovery. And so that's taken away. And maybe as a suggestion, or I don't know, y'all, now everything's telecom, and, maybe your support group, maybe it's a amount. I mean, I'm doing this because I own a school, and my teachers are doing it with their children, setting up a whole Zoom where everybody's on there, and the children are able, because the children are lacking that. Now they don't have that personal contact with their friends and their teachers. So suggestion, maybe, folks could gather up some key people, their sponsor or whoever was their important person in their life that's helping them track this, because it's hard for everybody. And the thought of not being able to get out and that support was a lot about how you coped with. So I think it's, if Chrissy and Patrick, we can kind of help people rather than just saying, oh, this sucks, this is hard, and we know it's hard. I'm always, how can we help you? And maybe we get some questions, how can we help you? Because I think that's, this one day will end, but this is tough time right now for everybody, and especially somebody that struggles with substance use. And there's isolation, and they don't have their people. So
mm-hmm. I do want to say that I'm going to say something positive, and then I'm going to say something negative. So just be prepared. So the positive is that I know, at least in our area, and I was reading this today, that they are doing AA meetings, smart recovery meetings on Zoom. The negative is, I guess there are stories now of how Zoom's privacy is being, people are going on there and trolling people. And so I want to say that I've read this article. Please don't be afraid. If you're meeting, or if you're meeting with people and now all of a sudden there's the possibility of someone coming into an AA meeting and trolling people while they're there and triggering them, that is always a possibility anyway. Please don't be afraid to still reach out for support. Some of these stories, while it's great to know information, can also be fear-mongering. So if you need that support, kind of like in pure ERP OCD fashion, like just expect that someone's going to bust in there and start screaming about alcohol. And then when they do, be like, okay, shut them down. Anyway, what were you saying, Jim, or whatever? So
yeah, because those could happen in live meetings too, really. I mean, someone can show up at a live meeting and do something like that. So
exactly. So Patrick, did you have a comment?
I would just say that, yeah, there's no privacy anywhere anymore. I mean, in some ways, right? You know, unless something meets some amazingly great encryptions and HIPAA compliance and everything of that nature, we can never fully know if someone's even at a meeting and isn't recording something. I had a teenager come into one of my sessions once, and I saw flash on her phone real quick video, and then she put her phone down on the chair next to me, and I said, "Are you recording the session?" And she was like, "Oh, no." I said, "Can I see your phone?" "Oh, no." And I said, "Well, I'm not comfortable going forward." And so, I mean,
you're like, is this a Facebook Live?
Yeah, that's what it kind of felt like, was suddenly your therapy going out in Facebook Live or something like that. So I stopped the session right away and said, "Listen, I'm just not comfortable doing this until I have access to your phone and I see what's on your phone right now, because I know that I saw a flash of video because I could see the hallway we were in on her screen. So I knew that she was recording something." And so it's all of this, I think, stress coming out now with this just kind of brings things to the forefront of some of this was maybe happening before already, even this was going on, but now everyone is really just kind of becoming aware of how can we establish issues with privacy, especially around mental health, where there's always been extra layers of privacy. I mean, even when I was working at Amita, there were the records that you had at the hospital if you were at the surgical hospital. But then if you went to the behavioral health hospital, there was a whole other level of privacy that you had to go through to access those records as well, too. So, you know, we've always been conscious on that, but we're also seeing now that how prepared were we to walk outside of how we had established it? Because no one thought about this, right? No, there weren't enough people with the forethought to think, what if this happens one day? How are we going to handle it? And instead, people are scrambling. And I hope this is a wake-up call to all of us that, and of course, this becomes the issue when we're dealing with people with obsessive compulsive disorder, right? Of, see, I thought of the bad things before. But I think it's important.
Right all along.
Exactly. I've heard that from people, right? But I think it's important for us in the treatment community to say, we were stuck in one way of thinking about things, and we have to be open to a few other possibilities of doing something, so that in the event something happens in the future like this or some other type of thing, we have a better and more seamless transition into doing what we need to do to support the people that need our support. That would be my soapbox on this whole thing. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I will say, Patrick, and I've said this before on the firesides, if this virus involved vomiting, you know, right now, Chrissy would be in a bunker under the house.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Who would not be doing this chat.
And then I would be blowing vomit germs into the pipe that was your airway into there, just so that you would be receiving them.
Chunks flying through the air.
Exactly.
Just some background on that. Patrick just loves to trigger people when it comes to their obsession. So if you hear vomit noises throughout this, it's him. Can I ask a question that goes a little bit deeper?
Yeah.
And this is unexpected, so get ready. I don't remember his name, and y'all might remember, but he did this TED Talk, and I actually heard him in person, and it was just powerful. In talking about addiction and substance use being the result of the loss and lack of human connection. I can't remember what his name is. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? There was this big video that went through. There was this study where there were mice or rats in one, and they had like the substance, and the rat, you know, OD'd. And then when you put the rat in the cage with rats in the cage with that, but have other rats, and there's things to do, and there's play, they can play and things like that. The rats actually won't go to the substance because of the connection. Anyway, Patrick, it's obvious you haven't, but it's obvious, Margaret, you have. So it's just the idea behind the root of addiction and substance use is going to be the lack of human connection, and how that human connection can really help people in recovering, which is, you know, obviously feeds into abuse and neglect being part of addiction, blah, 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 blah. So with that said, and Patrick, without you knowing what I'm talking about,
I'll jump in anyway.
I mean, let's talk about right now when you go out and people are walking by you and they're like, stay away. Like you have the plague, you know, and you're disgusting. what that might do to somebody who has struggled with abuse and neglect, growing up or in their adult life. And now all of a sudden, like, they turn to alcohol, or drugs or sex or porn, whatever else. And now here we are. We find ourselves in this place where lack of human connection is now the new norm. Let's talk about that. What is that like for people? What are your thoughts on all that?
Go ahead, Margaret. I mean, I'll jump in, but you do the study more. So,
no, I just remember, and I don't know his name, but I remember thinking that is so key. With whatever anybody does, it's about that human connection. Whether you're at a church, it's not about the church; it's those relationships and it's that contact with people. And I think in everything we do, and now all of a sudden, you can't, no contact, and you're in that, like you say, I was like, oh God, I shouldn't, like the grocery store, but I don't have anything to eat. But should I go out? And I don't have OCD, but how would somebody feel that way? I mean, this is a kind of a surreal for everybody. And feeling that shame of, oh gosh, I did go to the grocery store, and how people look at me. I went to the grocery. I've only been twice, but people kind of look at each other, and it's just an odd, surreal kind of feeling of, oh gosh, are they shaming me because I'm in here and I don't have a mask on, or don't, it's just an odd, and it's a difficult for anybody. And I can just imagine, or for me to have more empathy for somebody with OCD and substance use, because there's two possibilities where people are shamed.
His name is Johan Hari. Do you recognize that name, Patrick and Margaret? I'm sure you remember the video.
No, I'll have to check it out, though. It sounds interesting.
It's the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It's human connection by, I think it's Johan. It starts with a J, but I think the J is silent.
Yeah, Johan.
Okay. So yeah, that's my biggest thing is, my biggest fear for people, I guess, is that I remember hearing him speak. And I remember when I saw the TED Talk, I didn't watch it, and I was like, that guy's stupid. I know, because I'm judgmental. I'm just going to be upfront and honest with you. And then when I saw him in person talking about it, I was in tears, in just the, in creating the connection, or creating human connection for people who are struggling with addiction. All of a sudden, and that's why, okay, yeah, look, it's all coming back to me now. It's leading into kind of why we do, why we're pushing the clean needles, the sites where you can go and you can get clean drugs and you can use in that realm. So that's his whole thing. I'm sorry, I'm so unprepared here. But anyway, that's his whole thing. And for me, that has just struck me as what to me has been so debilitating about this and so scary for people, because the loss of human connection, the loss of, yes, being able to go to groups, being able to meet with people who get it, who understand it, who aren't going to look at you like a monster because you used to be an opiate addict, things of that nature. So that's what I'm worried about the most. What are your thoughts on that?
I have found it interesting. I'm going to step out of OCD just for a moment, and have found
this doesn't have to be about OCD. This can be about whatever.
Very good, because people with social anxiety are significantly struggling right now. Think about all the exposure and response prevention therapy we would do for people with social anxiety, to go out in public, to make a mistake, to interact with people, to have a conversation with someone that they've never met before, to go and sit close to someone at a movie theater. And people who are in the midst of doing all of those things now can't go do them because of what we have. And what is the number one issue that people seem to have kind of is co-occurring with social anxiety is using alcohol as a way to kind of help them get through social situations. So now, if there was already an addiction going on there, you've lost that social connection. You've lost your ability to do the exposure therapy piece that you were getting. So it's easier there again to turn back to substance use as a way to manage your concerns about what people might be thinking about you. And the thing with social anxiety, of course, too, is you don't actually even have to be out in public to be worried about what other people are thinking about you, right? So it could be your presence online. It could be, and this is where there's crossovers, say, with OCD. What if I send an email that has a mistake in it or something like that? So now I have to be on video conferencing. Does my high definition camera enhance my facial look and pores? Well, what if I have a body dysmorphic disorder type of issue and I'm very concerned about how I look? Now people are going to be right in my face, seeing me on a screen, everything, and my face is just, you know, this big on someone's screen or something like that. So the incredible aspect of how further this goes into anxiety and depression, because what is one of the hallmarks of depression? A loss of interest or pleasure in things you once enjoyed. Well, what if now you just can't go do things you once enjoyed because we aren't able to go and do some of those things? So look at the depression levels going up as well, too. Well, what if people start using some substances just as a way to get happy? Well, if you've got bipolar disorder and you're taking cocaine or something like that as a way to kind of elevate your mood, what if you set yourself into a manic episode now? Well, now if you have a manic episode, you don't care there's a quarantine. You're going out, right? You're having a great time. You're going to do all this stuff. Well, that gets you in trouble potentially. There's cities now who are ticketing people if they're going out and doing something. So I just think that the far-reaching effects on the mental health of people who already had established mental health issues is massive. And here's my hope, and I want to say this in the right way, because for people who don't have mental health issues coming into this, I think they're getting a slight taste of what people who have suffered from mental health issues have been feeling all along. I read an amazing article the other day about a woman who has OCD, and she wrote an article basically titled, "Now all of you get an idea of what my daily life has been for the last 5 years," right? And concern about bringing something in from the grocery store, and is it contaminated, who touched it before, and all those kinds of things. That I've lived that life for 5 years, and now all of you are getting a chance to see it. And before, none of you understood what was going on. And hopefully now, I hope that there's a bit of empathy that people have now that they've gone through a stressor, because since they couldn't see the stressor that the person with the mental health issue was suffering, it didn't exist. But now that all of us are going through a stressor that all of us see exists, unless you are a conspiracy theorist and this is all made up, but otherwise, now that we're going through something that all of us experience, does that hopefully raise empathy levels of people in the future who say, you know what, now that I've gone through a stressor, I get it. Mm-hmm. I hope that happens. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe a silver lining for people. I'm hoping. Yeah, that's a great point, Patrick, because I keep saying to my friends, you know what, this is what OCD people deal with on a day-to-day basis. You know, my colleagues or people that I work with, you know, because everybody's on high, and I'm like, yeah, that's what OCD people deal with on a day-to-day basis. So the silver lining is maybe people, when we come out of this, will have a little more empathy and a little more understanding because they've actually lived it.
Well, and again, our response could be, when people are trivializing OCD moving forward, it could be, oh, what did it feel for you during COVID? And then maybe all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, maybe I won't say so OCD. So that could be actually the remedy. Maybe this is the beginning of the detrivialization of OCD. Is that a word?
We'll make it a word for today.
Yeah, it is now.
Well, because, and I always have a standard response to that when someone says, oh, I have a little OCD. My standard response is, so then every time you have an odd thought, do you say to yourself, oh, I have a little schizophrenia? Well, no, nobody says that, right? So if you don't have a little schizophrenia, you don't have a little OCD as well, too. And we want to make sure, even through all of this, you don't have a little substance abuse, right? Or that kind of thing. I mean, if there's an issue, there's an issue. And let's not trivialize it. Let's not make something little or big. Let's just say, I've got a concern with this. This is a problem in my life. But also, for us getting the message out in any way that we can, that there are good therapies available for whatever those concerns are.
Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about the magnitude of the impact this is going to have on mental health, which is one of those things that, like, it's a 3 a.m. wake up. a fear of mine of, in 6 months from now, are we going to be concerned about the mental health workers, you know, on the front lines when there's no beds for people with mental health? Because inevitably this is going to, you know, this is going to really hurt people in the long run. But with that said, more on the productive line, what can we do right now to support our friends, colleagues, coworkers, people that may be struggling with substance use or an addiction? And a lot of times we know that this stuff is done in secret. We just know that. And as someone who struggles with substance use, heck yeah, I get that. And I don't want to talk to people, and I don't want to tell people, because even sometimes people bringing it up can make me feel a large amount of shame. But so, you know, between the two of you, you know, what can we do to help support our friends and family that maybe have struggled or are struggling? How can we do that in a way that's not shaming them or not exacerbating the problem for them right now?
Well, first thing is just validate people and say, boy, I understand this is probably a hard time for you. Mm-hmm. Just a validation that you understand, I think helps people, because when someone's going through something, it just makes them, okay, you do get it. You're not gonna, because right now, hell, I want to drink every day, you know. It is it's a stressful time right now. So I have more empathy for that, for people too. And I think when you can share that and say, boy, it's okay, and I'm here for you, and I understand this is hard. So that would be my message to folks.
100%.
And I just ask anyone who consults with me on something like that to do what they tell their patients, which is to follow advice, right? So if I would give advice to a patient to deal with a stressor, but I don't take it myself, I'm a hypocrite, right? And therefore, I have to make sure that I put time in my day to follow the advice that I give to other people as well, too. So that means taking some time to eat healthy, right? And not just grab a quick bag of potato chips. And it means that if I've got 10 or 15 minutes in between patients, now that I've been working from home, I'll go in my gym, which is just around the corner over there, and I'll hop on the treadmill for 10 minutes and I'll just walk, so that I'm not just sitting here all day long. And by the end of the day, feeling like I've got deep vein thrombosis in my legs or something like that, you know, just that I'm doing things that we know support mental health, which often do involve the food we take in, the amount of light we're getting on our skin, and the exercise that we're getting as well too. And even though we're outside or social distancing, we can still run and walk and go for a bike ride. And that doesn't mean don't go outside. It just means if you are outside, and don't run next to a stranger, give them some space, right? That kind of thing. But I can say from our own life here too. So, you know, many people out there know my wife has a pretty significant cancer diagnosis, so she doesn't get out of the house much. She gets out twice a day and walks her dog. And it's been really tough on her, because all the neighbors used to come up to her who are home every day, and they would talk to her, and she's lost that total connection now, because now if people see her walking down the street, because they know how sick she is and that she's very vulnerable to this COVID actually, they cross the street and they walk across the street and they just kind of wave at her. And that has been so hard for her as well. So we have to think about not just people who have mental health issues and their struggle, but how about the people who have physical health issues? How about our elderly who are in nursing homes, who now can't get visitors anymore, who sit in their rooms and just have a table in front of their door where food's delivered? You know, what can we do to help them, to make sure they're not just sitting watching TV all day? I did see a great picture the other day of one nursing home where all of the people were sitting at that table that now they've put in front of each of their rooms, and they were playing hall bingo. So everyone was at their door, everyone had a bingo card, and someone was at the end of the hall calling bingo. So at least they were somehow interacting with each other. They weren't just sitting behind a closed door. But how about for someone who can't get out of their bed and who's bedridden? You know, they're not getting visitors anymore. They probably don't have a laptop to do Zoom or anything like that.
And that's a great point, because I saw a post today about, all the children that are at home and can't, they're doing online, but God, sit down and write a letter. Your grandmother that you can't see, write a letter to her.
Right.
Find a nursing home that has people that need, we do that during the year. We send Valentine's cards and all that. And oh boy, that means so much. And right now that they can't see anybody. So going back old fashioned, nobody writes letters anymore.
Yeah.
Write a letter to your grandmother or your mom you can't see, or that person that, like your wife who can't, your neighbors could write a letter to her. Just, how nice would that be to get a letter if, cause you can't see anybody.
Yeah. Or be open more to the idea of FaceTime, that as we've gotten into more of the cellular phone world, and it was first we were having fun calling everyone, and then we were video chatting everyone, and now we just text everyone, right? So even that connection has kind of gone away as well too. Well, let's move away from a text to people. Let's purposely take time to get on a screen and to video chat with someone and get back to that. So at least there's some form of semblance of connection that's going on. Or how about just pick a day a week to do a good deed? What if you know that there's a hospital in your area and those doctors and nurses are going through hell right now with all the people coming in? Send 5 pizzas over to the emergency room or to one of the units up on there, and just say, hey, we know you're working hard. Thank you. And little things like that. I hope nobody's sitting at home feeling bored, because if you are, you're not thinking outside of the box about what you can do in a situation like this to be connecting to other people in your day-to-day life, right? Just because we're not physically connecting doesn't mean we can't be connected.
Yes.
I think that's a good point in regards to, yes, people who may be struggling at home and feeling like they can't do anything. One of the bigger things for me, especially when I am in a position where I feel like substance use is my main coping mechanism, an alternative to that for me is giving back, is helping others. Now sometimes I think it's hard for people to actually just get up and get off the couch to do it when you're in kind of the zone of depression or anxiety. But just like OCD, when you're practicing avoidance, the best thing that you can do is actually do what you're avoiding, and then you find out it's not as hard as you think it is. So for you, if giving back right now is just, I'm going to go for a walk, and when you pass someone, smile and wave. I mean, right now, the value of getting waved at and smiled at has gone up, right? Yeah. I mean, it's like currency now. Yeah. Like when I drive down the road, I'm like this. I'm like, hey, when I drive by anybody, and they're like, there's that crazy girl with the big hair, like waving out the window at me. But to me, it's like, it has to feel good for someone. I mean, it feels good to me, but just to have that connection, even the eye contact. People are all of a sudden really nice in person, not so much online, but they are nice in person. So that to me is amazing.
My friend told me she went to the grocery store, and of course nobody's talking and it's all awkward. And she goes by the produce guy and she said, hey, how you doing? And he was like, you're the first person that's talked to me and asked how I was doing.
What?
Yeah, because that's the way, I mean, everybody's so better. So yeah, those little signs of being kind and acknowledging somebody.
So, just some tasks that maybe you could do to give back if you're listening and you just feel like, I don't know what to do. Go sit on the curb and wave at people. Make a sign that says honk. Go back to like your childhood where you used to like honk at the car that goes by, but like go wave at people, smile at people. I mean, if that's all you can give, that's okay. Yeah. And because sometimes it feels daunting.
Somebody's life. Yeah.
But
my friend Jennifer Abel is a psychologist down in St. Louis. She's a really good piano player. So she brought her piano and an amp out onto her porch the other day on Saturday. And she just played a concert out on her porch for 2 hours. And cars were driving by and honking at her and waving and everything like that. And she loved it. She just had a great time. Then a buddy of hers who plays bass came over. He was 6 feet away from her playing the bass, and they played together. So you know, those kinds of things can still happen, right? You can still do that.
I think that we forget that in isolation, though. Yeah. And it's the, you know, even just hearing the reminder of from us, if you're listening to this and just feeling alone, there are ways to connect. And I hate kind of what has been going on more in the media, social media aspect, which is if you don't stay home, then you're killing people. Like, it's such bullshit to have that tagline, because for mental health, I mean, it's okay to walk outside and get some fresh air, people. It's okay to go to a trailhead and be responsible and get your sweat going on, walking up the hill, you know, going down to the creek, getting your hands in the water, you know, going to a lake, putting your feet in the lake like that. Connection to nature, I think, is just as important as connection to humans. And I told this story on Monday. I've been, you know, my routine hasn't changed that much, but the fact that it feels like it should change has really messed with me. But being able to still go down to the incline and be able to hit the trails. And as I am walking past people, whether we're 6 feet away or 10 feet away, being able to look people in the eye and just say, hey, how you doing today? Like, on the incline the other day, everybody's talking to everybody, where everybody hated each other 6 weeks ago. They're like, don't talk to me. I get my workout on. Get away. And now it's just like, hey, how's it going? How's your workout? The other day I went past this woman and we're going past this really steep. Patrick, you've never seen it, but it's like a 200 stair incline. I'm going up and this woman's coming down and we both made eye contact. And I was like, how you doing right now? And she tripped. And I'm like, oh my God. And it was slippery. I'm like, Ugh! And we both screamed and it was really funny. But I was like, what if I was trying to make human connection and then she died and I really did kill somebody?
All because you said hello to her.
It would be true. If you go out of your house, you kill people. Anyway, I thought that was funny. But I also thought it was a really good moment that I never would have had with someone if this hadn't have happened. So I'm certainly not silver lining things right now for me because I ain't ready for that. But it is cool to be able to get back to the root of seeing how wonderful it is that making eye contact can really, really change someone's entire day. We always hear that, right? Like the whole story of someone, you know, was contemplating suicide or they were, you know, in such a dark spiral and they went to the grocery store and the checker asked, how are you doing today? And it changed their whole day.
Right.
We have that opportunity right now. And don't be afraid to look people in the eye. Don't be afraid to wave and ask how you're doing at a certain distance.
Right. And self-care for yourself, I think is important.
Casey Brown just commented that.
Yes, he did.
Yay, Casey. Yeah, I think
all on the same page. And thank you, Josh.
Yeah,
he put detrivialization. So
yeah.
Okay.
That's very cool. Yeah, I think that's this self-care. Like, and Chrissy, I talked to you. Like, they locked the gates to my stadium that I can't run my stadium.
You got to climb the fence, girl. Climb it.
They locked me out of the parking area. It really blew my mind. But I said, okay, Mark, regroup, because I've been doing that since 2007 or 2008. But, you know, I'm fortunate I have my dirt roads and I have my horses. Lord have mercy. That's been a saving grace for me. But it is that self-care too. And that gives you that extra, if you're taking care of yourself, that gives you extra that you can help somebody else too. But if you don't take care of yourself, you can't do anything.
Right.
So I'm going to pose another question. We talked a little bit about, you know, how to talk to people if you know that they struggle with substance use addiction, and kind of how to check up on people without shaming them. Another good topic is, how do you ask someone for help? if you feel like, and I'm going to tell you a quick story. I was messaging with a really good friend of mine yesterday, who both of us, you know, go in and out of substance use at times, depending on what's going on. And we were talking and sharing how we're struggling lately. And he asked me, "Are you struggling with substance use right now?" And I almost like, you know, for a brief second, I was like, "Oh my God, why would he ask me that? What does that mean?" And like my whole brain went, and then I'm like, I'm a failure if I tell him the truth, you know, all this. So I started to go down, and then I went, no, I trust this person enough. And to actually be honest with him is being honest with myself. And I just said, yes, I am struggling harder now than before. And then we had a conversation about how we can support each other. And it was amazing. So with that said, how can people, what are some suggestions of how to reach out to someone and say, I'm struggling right now, or I'm scared? And then how can we diffuse that shame that comes along with that?
Well, let's talk about the shame piece first. That,
okay,
you know, it is such a big issue. And I got to work with a guy named Gershon Kaufman back when I was working at Michigan State University, who's wrote a lot of books on shame and everything. And it was his big experience. And it was fascinating to kind of learn all the different ways that people can be shamed or shame themselves into things as well, too. So I think that we have two kinds of shame to really take a look at. First of all, what you were talking about, being shamed on social media or something like that. But then the reciprocal, what are we doing to ourselves as well, too? Are we internalizing that message? And then, so we're hearing it, and that's shame, and then we're giving it back to ourselves, and that's shame as well, too. So let's take a look at the two parts of this experience. Number one, if you are finding that you're being shamed on certain types of social media sites, I've always said, you know, there's a difference between doing exposure therapy, which is purposely putting yourself in an uncomfortable position, which I'm all about people doing. But if you're just putting yourself in a position where people continually put you down, is that anything that you actually need to be exposed to? I wouldn't want to be exposed to that personally, not because I have an anxiety issue with it, just because it's not healthy for me. So what do we do, first of all, to remove ourselves from the things that are externally shaming us, if we possibly can, if it's social media types of things? Now, then we have to deal with, what if that's in the home? What if we are living with a partner who's shaming us because of our substance use as well, too? So that's where we have to utilize good therapeutic techniques. And now there's a lot of couples therapy that's even going on over teletherapy as well, too. This is the time to utilize those types of services to help you figure out, how can you live in a home together where one person might be abusing substances and another isn't, and you come to grips with how you're going to do that or deal with that in such a way that isn't going to be shaming but supportive, because ultimately we want to move the needle to get that person hopefully to stop using those substances. But you're probably just going to make that person want to use more substances if you just use shame as a way to try to stop them from using substances, right? Kind of like what you said, Chrissy, that if someone tells you you can't do something, you want to do it more than anything else in the world, right?
I didn't say that on the video. I said that before, I think. Thank you for exposing me.
Well, no problem. But I think most people who know you know that that's a fact anyway, so I'm not giving anything away. So,
my God, you just put me on blast.
Oh, like you've never been blasted before, please.
All right, I can take the heat. Go ahead.
So the second part then, and this is where I think good individual help comes in, or therapy, or what can you do from a self-help perspective for yourself, or with peer consultations as well too, is how do you assist people in recognizing the shaming they do of themselves, and what are the strategies that you can start to utilize that eliminate that shame and turn that into a positive. You can really admit to something being negative about yourself and utilize that as a tool for therapy instead of admitting that and then feeling shame about it, right? Mm-hmm. So there's nothing wrong with recognizing what your weaknesses are, but you don't have to put yourself down for them. You could utilize that as, this is the point now that I've recognized that, what am I going to put in place in order to improve it? You know, what is, from what we could take from the some of the Fortune 500 companies. What is constant process improvement that they do at companies? Well, what's constant process improvement we can do for ourselves as well too? And companies don't sit there and just shame themselves all day long in board meetings going, yeah, we just really suck. And we're not going to come up with a solution. We're just going to spend the next 3 hours putting ourselves down and see if that makes us feel better. Well, no company would survive if that's the case, and no human can function well if that's the case as well either. So how do we shift people, and how do we motivate people to shift off of shame to actually process improvement? That's where I want to go with the work that I do with people.
A clarifying question, and this may seem really elementary, but I think it's going to resonate with people, is how do you identify that you're shaming yourself?
Very simply, my absolutely favorite way to do that is, would this be the advice you would give someone you love?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is no, why are you doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I was listening to a podcast with Brene Brown, and I love her. And I was walking the dirt road listening, and, you know, it comes back to that vulnerability of to be vulnerable is really so brave, but we shame people to be when they are vulnerable. And that's when I see somebody that says, gosh, I have a substance use problem, or I'm struggling with this. I mean, that vulnerability, how we look at that, all of us or anybody listening to that, if you can look at it, boy, that vulnerability that they just opened up, rather than shaming, how can you know what, that's brave. That's brave of you admitting that. That's brave of you talking about that, whatever it is, whether it be OCD, anxiety, substance use, anything. When someone's vulnerable, I think if we can look at that as being brave and because that's hard. It's hard to do that. And we as society, we don't want to talk about all that bad stuff in our past or now or what we're dealing with, but it's pretty brave to do that. And then we, as though listening, need to have more empathy.
I think being really protective of your language that you use with people when they are either disclosing things or being very vulnerable. It's, we all come into having our own judgments about things that we may perceive and not understand that they can be a disease like addiction, alcoholism, things like that. Or maybe you've had a bad experience with someone who was experiencing addiction. My encouragement for people is, everybody's journey is different. Just because you've had a bad experience with someone does not mean that every single person that experiences addiction is a horrible person or is going to, and your trauma with that is also valid. However, being really protective, and not protective, but just being mindful of the language that you use when you're talking to someone with addiction. I think that there's such a disconnect for people to understand the amount of shame that shrouds someone who lives with addiction. And I think Patrick hit it, there's the external and then there's the internal. And if you're using language that's, oh, are you using during this? Or like, are you buying extra beer? Or, oh, you're going to the liquor store again? I mean, those are the things that you think you're driving people to recognize their problem. When I agree, Patrick, like, actually what you're doing is you're pushing them. They're going to buy 3 extra bottles of wine at the liquor store.
Yeah,
when they hear something like that. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and maybe explain it in a better way that I'm doing, or just why that is the way it is?
Well, it's kind of like how I see it is, if you have OCD and your brain tells you not to think about something, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
So if you're already kind of bent toward doing those types of things, then if somebody tells you not to drink, it's not too far off from your OCD telling you not to think about something. that's what you're going to think about doing. And what do we know happens with people with obsessive compulsive disorder? The quickest thing that I can do to make the situation better is the best thing to do to make the situation better, which is why compulsions happen, because they're quick. And so when you have a substance abuse, what's the quickest way to deal with shame or an emotion you don't like or withdrawal symptoms? To use, right? Mm-hmm. So this is why, when we opened Foglia at Amita, we saw that it was actually very easy to treat people with OCD and addiction together, because fundamentally, both of them share something in common, which is, what is it that I can do right now to feel the best that I can possibly feel? Even if it's not the best thing for me, that doesn't really matter. We'll put that aside for a minute. My biggest concern is doing what I can right now to feel the best that I can feel in the moment, because that's what's most important to me.
Can I ask you a question that might make me look stupid, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I get it all the time? Mm-hmm. Is addiction and OCD coming from a similar part of the brain?
Not necessarily a similar part of the brain. However, there are several cross pathways that are common in things. There's, dopamine is very common in substance use because it's part of the pleasure center. And so when people use, there's an increase of dopamine. I wouldn't be surprised that when somebody does a ritual, there's a little spike of dopamine that happens as well, because they feel better. But then there's some feedback circuits that say, well, that worked for a moment, but what if, anxiety carries one thing in it that substance abuse doesn't, which is that what if question. So there's the constant, great, you feel better now, but what if it happens again? And what if you think of it again, right? And so then you have to keep doing it over and over again. And as you have an addiction, you have to keep using more and more again, because you build a tolerance. So just like in OCD, you can build a tolerance to your safety-seeking behaviors and need to do more of them in order to feel as good today as you did yesterday. You can see something similar in substance use, where you need more substance today than you did yesterday to feel as good as you did yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because for me, as someone who struggles with OCD and substance use, it does feel the same almost. I don't want to say that it is the same, but it feels the same. The urgency feels the same. Okay. I need to do this or else. The same in practicing harm reduction. If I'm committing one day, okay, I'm only going to have one glass of wine tonight versus 3, and my commitment, it starts at 7 p.m. You better believe at 5 o'clock, my brain is screaming, you have to have a drink right now. You've got to do this right now. And if I can just wait out the urge, which, just like if I can wait out the compulsion to avoid or the compulsion to ruminate, all of a sudden the urge dies down. So I've always been curious about that.
They share very common properties that way. So that's why, and I was always amazed when we'd have people at Foglia and people would say, no one's ever asked me about anxiety before. And this is your 4th detox. How could no one have ever asked you that before? Because the parallels are just so amazing. But Margaret, you've seen that in your own personal life as well, too, and struggled with how Riley dealt with things and everything, too, and unfortunate with that. So, yeah.
Well, we are coming up on about 52 minutes, so we probably should do some wrap-up thoughts. This hour went by really fast, didn't it?
Sure did, yeah.
I know. I love y'all. I wish
when you detrivialize things, it goes by very quickly, just so you know. Yeah, so.
Time goes by when you detrivialize. Our new saying. So why don't we just do some final thoughts? Margaret, maybe just giving some words of just hope and support for people out there who may not know how to reach out support, maybe sliding right now and they don't know how to stop, or they're scared that things are going to relapse. What are your words for people right
now? You know what, Chrissy, I think first I want to say you're not alone, and you're not even alone if you have OCD. Everybody right now is scared. And this uncertainty is, driving our whole country. And if you are struggling, if you need support, I think, like we talked about, it might not be that human, but what we talked about is going outside, waving, getting out. Do not sit in isolation. Whether it be, getting on online, you need that human connection, and we all. I mean, I think of, be honest, I think like Blake Riley. I've thought a lot, and I'm going to try not to get emotional. I think, God, how would he be dealing with this right now? And I'm almost thinking, hey, bud, no worries, be peaceful, because I know it's hard. It's just hard, and I know it won't last forever. It feels like it right now, but it won't. And don't hesitate to reach out. I mean, you got, whether it be Chrissy, Patrick, anybody that's been on these fireside chats in a heartbeat would love to, we'll connect and help you. We're here for you. We're scared too, but we'll be vulnerable too, because it's a tough time for all of us.
A couple of things that I've said to patients. Number one, like if the advice that you're giving yourself wouldn't be the advice you'd give to anyone else, then it's not advice worth taking. So try to come up with advice that you would give to someone else and follow it and see what would actually work. Number two, don't trust what they say, because we don't know who they is, right? People say, well, they said, and they said this. And I always ask people, who's they?
Who's they?
Do you know who they is? Actually, could you tell me who they is? Because
the Illuminati.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. If you don't know who they is, I don't give a crap what they say. So listen to advice coming from experts. If we're prescribing evidence-based treatments to people like exposure and response prevention, then we should follow evidence. And where does evidence come from? The CDC, the World Health Organization. Let's follow evidence from credible organizations where we can say, this is what the CDC says, not, they say, like the email I got the other day, my neighbor's son's second grandparents, third cousins removed, doctor's aunt once said that it's gas stations that are now passing COVID-19 to everybody. So wash your hands when you go to the... All right, that's ridiculous. I
think I heard that. It's the gas pump. So that was your family lineage.
Yeah, exactly.
Spreading that rumor.
Stop listening to this stuff. Limit your screen time. Do things that are positive and proactive, that are building up good emotions and good feelings in you. And if you need help, reach out to therapists. There's therapists all over the country who are setting up teletherapy. We at NoCD are in 19 states now doing teletherapy with people as well too. So we're out there, we're available. Download the NoCD app. There's a great community feed on the app as well. There's therapy tools on the app too that are available to people to help you through this. So no one has to suffer by themselves.
Yes.
So my final thoughts are, I agree with everything that you both said, and thank you for being on here and talking about this much needed discussion that doesn't often get talked about and needs to be talked about more. My final thoughts are, I'm with you. I'm struggling myself with substance use right now, and doing what I can to put things in place to help get support. Practicing harm reduction, talking to my husband whenever I need to. I'm lucky that I have a relationship where I can talk about it and I do not at all feel shamed. I have friends that I can talk to, Margaret and other people, and Patrick, you too. I haven't really talked to you about it, but I will. I'll call you tonight. But I just want you to know that the first thing that I think of in this situation is, how can I get numb and how can I just tune out? That is the first thing that I think of. And the easiest way to do that is to grab a glass of wine or do it. And so I am making active choices during the day to get out instead and go get on the trails or go do what I need to do, or make that like driving down around the neighborhood, waving at people like a wild woman. But it just, and it's hard for me to get out of the house. Even I'm doing my computer stuff, and then all of a sudden it's 2 o'clock, and I'm like, oh, I'm just not going to go. I'm just going to stay here, and my world starts getting really, really small. And just like OCD and avoidance, if you just say, I know I'm avoiding this, but I'm going to do it anyway, when you get out there, you're so glad you did it. And so I just want to give you that little token of hope that I'm struggling to, but I have been making an effort to get out and do stuff anyway. And I always feel better with that human connection. I will drop the article or the TED Talk in the comments later for Johan Hari. I think it'll be really good for people to hear and kind of reflect on what we were talking about with human connection. So I agree, this is not going to last forever, but while it is lasting, I know it's tough and I know it's hard. So we're going to continue to show up for you in doing these chats with different people and talking about different emotions and different topics. And I just appreciate, Patrick, you and Margaret. I love you both. I appreciate all you do for our community and advocating and treating and just showing up for people. So thank you.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Thank you, Chrissy.
And thank you for everybody for joining us. I hope that you got some information out of this that helps you feel normalized in what you're experiencing during this uncertain time. I know I have, and I feel a lot better about the choices that I'm making, and I'm going to continue to push every day. And I hope that you will too. Please reach out if you need help. It is important that you don't walk down this path alone. We at OCD Game-Changers are doing everything that we can to walk alongside you. So we'll see you at Friday, I think at 1 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, 3 p.m. with Josh Patelnik. Yay! So we'll see you then. In the meantime, please reach out if you need support or we welcome all your comments in the comment section. Bye, everyone.
See you, everybody.
Have a good day.